Build Tim Walz, build Tim Walz, build Tim Walz. I don't really know what that means, but it just feels right. And yeah, I feel excited. It's Tim Walz. He's the one. I don't know if everybody watching this was rooting for him. I know there were a number of candidates for VP for Harris to choose from that definitely had their backers. I know there was a big Shapiro contingent. There were the Bashiriacs, and obviously the Kelly space maniacs. But it's gonna be Walz, and I don't know. It felt like it was gonna be. That's not what people on the internet seem to think, but he was just going wild, going viral, getting people hyped, and it felt like that's what Harris would want to capitalize on. Ever since it became clear Biden drops out, it's gonna be Harris. The vibes have been so positive. You just kind of want to double down on that. And I feel like this is how you do it. So without too much further ado, we are going to dive into a conversation about Tim Walz, some of the reactions to him. We will, of course, be trying to get him on the show. We'll see how that goes, but we are going to be working on it. Aside from that, though, we will also be talking about the state of the economy, the stock market. I had a little bit of a dive. Donald Trump, I guess, tastes blood in the water. And so him and the right are going to try to use that. We've got Clarence Thomas with even more corruption than we thought before. New polls and the Kamala Harris had a variety of different calls to organize support for her. I participated in the White Dudes for Harris. Comics for Harris happened. It was a lot of fun. We're gonna be playing you some clips. And all that's just in the first hour. Even more coming up in the aftermath, so stay tuned for that. But I don't want to waste any more time. Send us your comments, your tweets, your super chats, hit the like button, and we're gonna jump into this. So you're probably wondering at this point, who is this Governor Tim Walz fellow? What's he all about? Well, we're gonna run through some of his greatest hits, starting with this endearing moment.
It is now.
And my legs hurt too.
Okay, so that is Governor Tim Walz obviously signing a bill. It was a bill to guarantee free breakfast and lunch for all students in Minnesota, which is the sort of thing that you might think, especially if you live outside of the United States, like, isn't that just automatic? But this is America after all, so don't take anything for granted, but he did get it done and it happened. And you've seen many times when politicians have been signing bills and there have been kids around them. And obviously, look, it's a photo op and all that, I understand that, but didn't that one feel a little bit different? Like the kids did seem genuinely happy to be around him, and he really did seem genuinely happy for them. And of course, he has his own history as a teacher. I'm sure he had many instances in which he knew that kids that he was teaching weren't getting enough food. And now he's able to come in, take his experience and get it done. And it's just super endearing. I just love it. So anyway, that's a great bill. And I didn't know that he had signed that. There's a lot that I didn't know about Tim Walz before the whole VP search started. And it turns out that there's a lot that he got done that I think a lot of people are going to like. And so I want to run through some of these greatest hits. And More Perfect Union on Twitter and Threads. Go to Threads, don't go to Twitter. In fact, get off of Twitter. Why are you on Twitter anymore? Did a great job at compiling some of these. And I want to talk through some of them, as well as some of his biographical information that I put together. And so let's talk about some stuff and you see which you like most. So last year he signed a law enacting paid family and medical leave, giving workers up to 20 weeks off, which is great. I mean, that's more than I got even in California. California's pretty good compared to the rest of the US. I got 12, they got 20. I love it and I want them to get that. He said paid family and medical leave seemed like a pipe dream for 10 years. It seemed like, why can other people have this and we can't? Well, now you can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And they have it. That should be federal. And maybe they'll get it done. It's a thing that he cares about. It's a thing that he did. Maybe they can make it happen at the federal level. Now, it's wildly popular, and I think it's morally demanded. So anyway, that's good. This is a little bit wonkier, but I think it's important too. So he approved the nation's broadest right to repair law last year that allows independent shops and owners of phones, laptops, and other electronic devices to more easily repair products without relying on corporations like Apple and Google. Now, I don't know if you've ever had to go through this, but computers and phones are incredibly expensive devices. And it used to be that you would work on them 20 years ago or whatever. But now it is much more difficult to do that. They're made in a way that they're not made to be repaired. And in many cases, simply opening up the cases will void your warranty. So that's an Apple thing, that's a Google thing. And Europe has been leading the way in trying to give people back their right to work on these things. And we're not there as a country yet, but Minnesota got it done, which is great news. So you have that. You also have him signing a law. It's a financial aid program giving free college tuition to students whose families made less than $80,000 a year. It made such an impact that North Dakota State University, fearing competition, began offering the same incentive. But that's exactly how this is supposed to work, okay? I generally want things to be done at the federal level. I think that Republicans generally lie when they pretend that they care about state level stuff or whatever and think that it's important that it happens, but this is how it can work. We have 50 different laboratories for experimentation and democracy, and when one state gets it right, not only gets it right, but gets it so right that people are gonna flee your state so that they can benefit from that, then it spreads. It's awesome. That should also be at the federal level, okay? But there's a whole lot more besides. And I know this is getting into wonky territory, but you need to know who this guy is because you're gonna see a lot of him over the next, hopefully 4 to 8 years. But anyway, he signed a sweeping omnibus bill this year that included universal background checks for guns, a so-called red flag law, and large investments in community-based violence prevention programs. So those are good, very much in the realm of common sense gun regulations. And by the way, not only did Tim Walz get this done, which is important for this year and for this cycle, he didn't used to be that great on guns. He was endorsed by the NRA at one point, but over time, and after all the shootings that we've seen, he was able to take it in, change his policies, okay? And so he did that. And that is great news, and that's what you want to see. The ability to change, not as a result of getting like a fat campaign check, but because you see the consequences of the current status quo when it comes to gun regulation, and then you change things, okay? In addition, ban non-compete agreements and captive audience meetings. So some great stuff for labor there. Significantly expanded leverage for workers in meatpacking plants, warehouses, schools, and more. We need more people like that in government at the highest levels. Tim Walz seems like a good guy when it comes to this stuff. Created the nation's first standards board for nursing home workers. This year, that board voted to set him a minimum wage of more than $23 an hour starting in 2023. So more great news for workers there in that particular vital industry. Ban junk fees, just a small thing, but I like it. And not only that he did it, but this is a thing that Joe Biden has been like really working on, these sort of like ways that they nickel and dime you or 5 and 10 buck you. And I like now Harris maybe can continue that with an ally who has also been waging that war. Little thing like legalizing recreational weed, he did that, as well as expunging the record of people convicted for misdemeanor possession. Again, seems insane that in 2024, this isn't illegal across the entire country, but he helped get it done in his own state. And it certainly took a while. I believe that the campaign to legalize recreational weed there has been going on since like the Ventura days, but he got it done. That's great news. He also pushed for and signed the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act that capped insulin prices at $35, which you love to see. I don't personally think, and call me a radical, that people should go bankrupt so that they simply die, okay? So they don't die. And so great news there. Again, we've had similar sort of thing here in California, and there's certainly more talk federally, but we need more of that. And a broader version of this, he created a prescription drug affordability board to rein in out of control drug costs more broadly. In June, the state began monitoring hundreds of drugs for price transparency to better inform patients and policymakers. So that's an intermediate step. Obviously, we need to go way further than that, but it's good news. Also, and you'll hear about this later on in our show, mandated carbon-free electricity by 2040 in the state. It's 2040. It's not tomorrow, okay? There's time. That is not radical. Stop letting people call a 2040 time horizon for us no longer poisoning the air, water, and land that we live on as being radical. It's not. So that's good news. And by the way, before I move on to other policy areas, none of this is to say that every one of these bills is exactly what it should have been. I've been a little bit critical even as we've been doing this, and I'm sure we'll find out more about his record. No candidate is perfect, okay? We're all discovering more about Tim Walz. Maybe some of you were Walz, experts or whatever, but it's good news, okay? And better than a lot of people that you could have chosen. But additionally, I want to focus on one of the most important issues for this cycle. The president of Reproductive Freedom for All called Walz, quote, a steadfast champion for reproductive freedom, working tirelessly to protect and expand abortion access for Minnesotans. And then on the other side, the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America called him and Harris, quote, the most pro-abortion presidential ticket America has ever seen. And to that I say, don't threaten me with a good time. Again, they're not radicals. They're not trying to do abortions even after birth, all the insane conspiracist lies that they tell, but they do believe that you should have control of your body. They think, and again, radical, that you should have the rights that you had for 48 of the last 50 years. And I don't think that's crazy. And on a related topic, he and his wife had their 2 children through in vitro fertilization. He's talked about that in his media appearances. Both very salient issues for the cycle we're in. And oh, what do you know? You have a guy with this record on IVF and abortion who's gonna be doing a debate against JD Vance, who is literally among the most radical people in America when it comes to abortion. He doesn't want you to be able to get an abortion, even in the case of rape and incest. Put him on a stage with Tim Walz and see how he does. So that's great news. Also, this is less Bill's, this is more just his personal record. He was an early supporter of gay rights. He sponsored Mankato West High School's first gay-straight alliance back in the 1990s, and it said it was important at that time for the sponsor to be, quote, the football coach who was the soldier and was straight and was married. And I just love that. It was back in the 90s. Again, I don't wanna like dampen the vibes, but when did Hillary Clinton switch over? Like 2012, 2014 or something, like it was back in the 90s. That's great, that's great. Biographically, obviously Midwestern governor, we've already covered it. Military veteran, former school teacher, all of this is good news. And in terms of why you should be excited, I've given you the policy reasons, but I'm sure you've seen his appearances. He was on the White Dudes for Harris call that I was on, he was great there. He's the guy that sort of got the weird talking point going. Obviously, people have been criticizing them as weird for a long time, but he's the one that inspired the most recent crusade. And how has that been going for the right? So love it. He's got good instincts too, which is awesome. Now, again, not to say that everything is gonna be like awesome. They're gonna criticize him for a lot of stuff. We'll talk about some of it later on. But first off, you've probably seen going around his mugshot, which is weird because I thought mugshots make you the coolest guy ever recently. But anyway, he did have a pretty bad DUI. It was 30 years ago, but it was a pretty bad DUI. He was driving way above the speed limit. Now, after that DUI, he apparently gave up alcohol, and it's been 3 decades. So that's one of the things they're gonna focus on. You have the policy that we were talking about, and then you have the 3 decades ago DUI that apparently changed his life forever. So, balance those things. But there's a lot more to him. He doesn't drink coffee, and this is really the most negative thing. He doesn't drink coffee, but he does like caffeine. You know what he drinks in place of coffee? Diet Mountain Dew. So he's not that dissimilar from JD Vance, perhaps. I'm kidding. But anyway, obviously I'm excited. I know a lot of you are. We're gonna find out more about him. He's gonna be doing an event with Harris today. He's gonna be doing I think it's like a 5-day, 7 swing state tour. We're gonna hear a lot of speeches from him. We're gonna see him in the media. I'm very excited, can't wait to hear his speech at the DNC. But this is like, we're on a good path with Harris. And I think this just adds a little bit more fuel to the fire, which is good news. But that's what I think. Let's turn to what others are thinking. Would you like to hear what presidents are saying about the new VP pick, Tim Walz? Well, we're gonna start with Donald Trump, who that picture really summarizes what he thinks about Tim Walz. He put out this fundraising email saying, Tim Walz would be the worst VP in history. Dude, you're going around saying that Harris is the worst VP in history. You have to choose at some point. But anyway, he says, even worse than dangerously liberal and crooked Kamala Harris. He hasn't even defined why you're supposed to think that she's crooked. He just knows that he liked saying about Hillary Clinton, so he just says it. He literally has not given a reason for why she's supposedly crooked. He's that bad. He'll unleash hell on earth and open our borders to the worst criminals imaginable. I thought it was already open. What do you mean he'd open it? You're running on it being an open border. Again, figure out what your lane is and stick to it. You don't even know the script at this point, buddy. He'll rubber stamp Kamala's green news scam and like trillions of dollars on fire. That part doesn't even make any sense. What do you mean he'll rubber stamp it? He won't be involved in it. He'll be the VP, but he doesn't get a veto. What are you talking about? Do you know what VPs do other than run away from the mob that you sicked on them to lynch them? Other than that, do you know what VPs do, Donald Trump? But my favorite part of it is they want to mock this guy. Okay, just like with Harris. But just like with Harris, they don't even know exactly how they want to mock him. So I apologize to a control room. But if you could put that graphic up one more time. So he's the worst VP in history. He's dangerous. He'll unleash hell on earth. And then they put the most delightful photo ever. He loves hugging pigs. That does not scream apocalypse to me. I don't know, maybe it does for you, but that makes him seem like a nice guy. And the issue for them is that might actually be the scariest photo of him. He is basically like a Teddy Ruxpin that came to life. Every photo of him is pretty much adorable. So I don't know what you do when you're trying to scare people. But anyway, that's what he said. I'm gonna balance the scales though with what Barack Obama said. Former President Barack Obama said, like Vice President Harris, Governor Tim Walz believes that government works to serve us. Not just some of us, but all of us. That's what makes him an outstanding governor, and that's what will make him an even better vice president. Michelle and I couldn't be happier for Tim and Gwen, their family, and our country. Governor Walz doesn't just have the experience to be vice president, he has the values and integrity to make us proud. As governor, he helped families and businesses recover from the pandemic, established paid family leave, guaranteed the right to an abortion, and put common sense gun safety measures in place to keep communities safe. But Tim's signature is his ability to talk like a human being and treat everyone with decency and respect. Not at all that surprising considering the fact that he served in the National Guard for 24 years and worked as a high school social studies teacher and football coach before being elected to Congress. And honestly, in a lot of ways, he kind of seems like what JD Vance wants you to think he is. A man of the people that cares about labor, is a regular guy. Yeah, you grew up poor, JD Vance. I get it, okay? Yeah, same, buddy. I didn't become a venture capitalist. Once you become a millionaire venture capitalist, I don't care about the Appalachia of you. It doesn't apply anymore. But this guy kept it real even afterward, and I love it. Okay, with that said, not all of the reactions to Tim Walz have been super positive. Let's move to one example of that.
This is a stunning choice. I imagine there's a lot of cheering at Mar-a-Lago at the moment. Look, Tim Walz, he's no one to scoff at. He unseated a 6-term Republican in Congress. He won a conservative district. He began as a moderate, and then he had a radical transformation as soon as he got a trifecta in Minnesota. I think it is fair to call him a progressive in sheep's clothing. When you look at his record over the last few years, what you see are transgender surgeries for minors, carbon electrical grid by 2040, driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. In function, his abortion policy allows abortion until birth. These are policies that are far to the left of America. And as John McCormick at the Wall Street Journal pointed out, Kamala Harris has to do the exact opposite of what Tim Walz did. Tim Walz became more progressive. Kamala Harris is trying to become more moderate. But Republicans are going to say, you've shed all your progressive policies, but yet you chose a progressive instead of the guy who outperformed Donald Trump and Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, and that man's name is Josh Shapiro.
And that could potentially bring support from Jewish voters, something the Harris campaign needs sorely, no matter who's on the ticket with her.
What the hell is that supposed to mean? Jewish voters overwhelmingly go for Democrats. There's no sign that this election is going to be anything different. So what a weird narrative to pretend that Donald Trump is winning in a demographic that he definitely isn't. But we're going to turn to other topics from what Kayleigh McEnany just said there. So many of you are probably wondering, what's a carbon electrical grid? Well, carbon electrical grid is a way that you signal to your viewers that you don't actually know about or care about this topic. You're just throwing words out that you don't really understand. She's referencing the fact that by 2040, the state is gonna have a carbon-free electrical grid, which is great for the state, for the country, and for our world. They want you to think that it's scary. They won't say why. They just want you to think that. And then there was a whole lot of lies besides. So they started off with transgender surgeries for kids. What is she referencing? God only knows, other than the fact that she and every other person on that network cannot go 5 minutes without thinking about the transgender community. Literally all day, every day, they're thinking about members of a community that they don't know or care about or care to learn about, but they really want you to be scared about these people. And then abortion up until the moment of birth, just more wild lies. See, what all of this is a representation of is she is trying to make the case that he's a radical. That's what they want to do. They desperately want to pitch Harris and Walz as radicals. The issue for them is that's difficult to do because they're not, and he certainly is not. His actual signature accomplishments are super common sense, super reasonable, and most importantly, and devastating for the people who are supposedly clapping in Mar-a-Lago, super popular. People like paid family leave. They like having control over their bodies. They like having the ability to bargain collectively. They like all of these things. They like common sense gun control. Okay, so she's on Fox News, super friendly audience, and they're gonna eat it up. But that doesn't matter. They're all voting for Trump anyway. Actually being able to win over independents and convince them that this guy that has just had hit after hit after hit that they're gonna love when they hear about, that is a far harder job. And I don't think that she has it in her to actually convince them that it's a bad thing. Okay, we have a lot more that we could get into when it comes to his record and all that, and we'll certainly have more responses as the week rolls on. But that is our first intro to Tim Walz, what different people think. I think that Trump is freaking out about him, not because he's happy and he's cheering, but because he knows he's gonna be an effective surrogate on the campaign trail, on the news, and also on the debate stage with weirdo JD Vance. Okay, we're gonna take a short break. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there in the audience. I can say that what's going on here in the studio is we have our trademark one tiny little flying insect. Most annoying thing in the world, and there's nothing I can do about it. Anyway, let's see. Okay, I set aside one special comment and now I'm not finding it. So let's jump into members' comments. Ingram says, Walz feeds kids, Trump puts them in cages. Put that in an ad. That's pretty good, Ingram. I like that. Okay, Mitrian says, I watched part of comics for Kamala. It was awesome. We're gonna play a little bit, including, I think, the first ever excuse I've had to show one of my favorite comics on the show. And in a related fashion, I know people are speculating about who is gonna play Walz on SNL. I do think that Steve Martin should be the favorite. We'll see what ends up happening, but I think he could do a good job. Okay. Rubik's Realtor Dragon says in the members' comments, Walz is the best thing Bernie backers could have ever asked for. He's damn close in his views. Could not be better news. My wife wrote in Bernie 2X, says she'll now vote Harris. Yeah, look, I'm not totally ready to say that necessarily. Well, to the second part. The first part, is it the best thing that Bernie backers could have hoped for? Probably, yeah. I don't. Who is a high-profile, likely possibility that would have been better, more like I don't know if there is anyone. So I do agree with you that. Let's see. Asimov's Prophet says Harris's new political strategy should be all about the kids now, that unifies no matter your party affiliation. Yeah, look, and you can talk about what you're doing for the kids, like making sure that they have food and schools and that they aren't shot with an AR-15, whereas they're very interested in what is in your kids' underwear. And they really want people to be paid by the government to check occasionally what's going on in your kids' underwear, and are they having periods? And we should really have a database where we track that. There are a bunch of weirdo, creepy pervs who are way too interested in your kids' nether regions. So run those ads. They're not going to, but I'll send me to the media. I'll talk to about it. Anyway, Brandy Cruz became a member. Thank you. Dat Girl EB became a member. Thank you to both of you. Much appreciated. Anthony McClendon gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, Anthony. And Moondragon gifted 5 memberships as well. Thank you, Moondragon. Thank you to all the members. We rely on our members every day, particularly in a big election year. Very important for giving us the resources necessary to go to the RNC, go to the DNC, those sorts of things. So thank you, and continued thanks to all of you who are becoming subscribers to the show. We have shot past 970,000 subscribers. We are closing in on our ultimate goal, at least for now. Before the election, 1 million subscribers. We can make it happen. Let's do it. Okay, let's see. James the Fuzzy Dragon says in a super chat, Walz for VP, to quote Deadpool, let's effing go. I like it. I got to see Deadpool this weekend. It was quite enjoyable. I apologize to everyone that wants the MCU to be dead, but I don't know, it did pretty well and it made a ton of money. So we'll see what happens. Grant Stanfield, member for 43 months, says, John, go ahead and get the buzz cut. I've been cutting my own hair to 3 millimeters all over with a beard trimmer since lockdown, and I love the freedom. I mean, that is effectively what I used to do. I don't know if it was 3 millimeters, but I cut my own hair, had my wife do it. But yes, I am considering going super short again. I might drag out the longer hair for a bit more, but I am starting to want to go short. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, Jess says in a super chat, let's go. The Walz is closing in on Trump and Vance. I love it. And Chet Lay says, never ever stop dead naming Twitter, John. look, I have multiple reasons to do it. I hate Elon Musk, at least on the level of Trump. In some days, I hate him more than Donald Trump. And also, it's the stupidest new name ever, and I just refuse to play his game. Okay, welcome back, everyone. If you've been listening to the show live, including the social break, do not worry. I will not be spoiling Deadpool, but go watch it. Anyway, in that case, we're gonna move on to our next story, the big topic, something that could potentially throw the election into a bit of chaos. Let's jump into this.
All the money Americans lost today is caused by Bidenomics, so buckle up. And the hemorrhaging is not over. Japan's stock market, they just posted their worst day since Black Monday from 1987. All of this being fueled by the very real fears that the Biden-Harris economy will spiral this country into a full-on recession.
Oh my God, Sean Hannity is growing more and more pathetic as he gets older. It's punditry by ChatGPT. Any one of you watching this could have written that monologue for him. Bad thing happens in another country on the other side of the world. It's because of Harris. Yeah, it's her. It's Harris's VP definitely is responsible, but not even responsible. Is responsible because if she became president, then she could be responsible. Yeah, that's the ticket. That's probably what it is. Look, it's utterly ridiculous. Now, look, there is a truth to the topic that he's talking about. Stock market did have a bad day, a particularly bad day, and not just here in the United States, but also in Japan. So we had our worst day since 2022. And to give you an idea how devastating the stock drop was here in the United States, after that big drop, we're only up like 15% over Donald Trump's best day ever on the stock market. Haha, dun. The stock market is still doing much better. And Sean Hannity is so happy to now be able to talk about the stock market because he has had to pretend it doesn't exist for the last few years as it has gone up to record levels. And so you saw him trying to pin all of this on Harris, pin it on Biden, pin it on whatever you think will work. He did, in particular, a big monologue on the Japanese stock market. So he talked about it a ton. And then, now you wouldn't know this if you watch Sean Hannity's show, it had its best day since October 2008 and logged record single day jump in points. He didn't talk about that, which is weird because we've already established that anything that happens in the election is due to Harris and whether she'll be president or not. So if it fell because of Harris, well, then clearly it rose because of Harris as well. Look, all of this is ridiculous and it is beneath us. It's not beneath him, nothing is, but it's beneath you and it's beneath me. Look, if you want to make a case that a policy that was pursued, or even like a statement, something that was actually done led to a result, then do that. But just taking any random thing that happens and being like, it's Harris. Or if the stock market goes up, Trump will be like, it's me, as we'll get into more. Like that is child stuff, that's baby stuff. And Sean Hannity is a full-grown man. He's basically an elderly man at this point. We should be able to expect more from him. But anyway, let's turn back to the US. So this is where we're actually at. So you can see the dip, you can see the beginnings of the recovery from that right there. So the first graphic right there is the S&P 500, you have the Dow Jones as well. So it is a dip. I mean, when you put it in the context of the last 5 days, I mean, it doesn't seem as apocalyptic. Like theoretically, in a week's time, we could be back up to where we were. But Fox needs something right now. The right and Trump desperately need a narrative to run on. It has been nothing but bad news when it comes to the polls, when it comes to the fundraising, when it comes to the volunteers, and certainly when it comes to the vibes. And they need something. And so what are they doing right now? We can speculate a little bit together. They are desperately hoping that the stock market falls more. Now, maybe you're a Republican, maybe you're a conservative and you want that too, because you think it will help Trump. But just think about what you are hoping for. You are hoping for damage to be done to industries. You are hoping for damage to be done to 401ks. You are hoping that people's personal investments, including, by the way, countless millions of conservatives, lose value just to give Donald Trump a chance of getting back in this thing. I think that's kind of sick. But I've talked a lot about the context of not only Biden's term, but also Trump's. So I want to go into a little bit of that. So we're going to show you not just the 5-day S&P or whatever. So let's jump to, here's the last 4 years. So you can see, yeah, at the end there, it does tick down, but like you see the trend as well. Donald Trump had been sort of moving up, and then obviously his utter voluntary bungling of COVID did way more long-term damage to US society, culture, and the economy than it needed to. And then it's been up, and the trend is undeniable. It's also unmentionable if you're on Fox News, and you can see a similar thing, by the way, when we go to the Dow Jones as well. The trend is undeniable at that point. And you could already see the Dow has rallied 400 points. I don't know what's happening literally live while we're on the show. I'm not a huge stocks guy, same as Sean Hannity. I understand it at about the same level as he does. But if you're gonna try to lay the blame on a president or the credit, you should at least understand what you're talking about and provide a little bit of evidence. That said, as I've alluded to, Donald Trump has not stopped talking over the last 48 hours about the economy. He's saying it's a recession. He's desperately hoping it's a recession. Well, we're gonna move now to Fox News, where his attempt to create this narrative got slapped down, I think, pretty effectively. Take a look.
The Donald Trump thing in the market amazes me. When they're up, it's all because of him and looking forward to him. When they're down, it's all because the Democrats and how horrific they are. Yet some of our biggest point fall offs, 3 of the biggest of the top 10, occurred during his administration. Now, a lot of those were in the COVID years. I get that, but you either own the markets or you don't. It does confuse me.
It does confuse Neil Cavuto, except that it doesn't. And it confuses us on some level, except that it doesn't. It's because none of this needs to mean anything. They are all about power. Truth means nothing. Objective fact means nothing. There's nothing true or real to any of this. It's whatever it needs to be. If it looks like it's doing bad, then he's gonna okay, so we're gonna run you through an example of what he's talking about. We'll get to the bad. Let's start with the good. This is January of this year. This is an ancient history. January of this year. This is the Trump stock market because my polls against Biden are so good that investors are projecting that I will win and that will drive the market up. Everything else is terrible and record-setting inflation has already taken its toll. Make America great again. Okay, so there he wants you to believe that the fact that the economy, the stock market specifically was doing record numbers is him because people are projecting that he'll become president and that will drive the market up. So he says it will drive the market up, but he wants to pretend that the fact that it's already driven the market up is somehow up to him, because that's definitely how capitalism works and that's how investment works. So something good might happen from your point of view, hypothetically, 9 months from now. So I'll invest massive amounts of money now. Why would you do that? That's not how that works literally at all. And I honestly don't even know if he knows that. He's not much of a businessman. So when it was doing well, then that was his benefit. And now we had a bad day or two. You can see this. I'm not gonna read all of them, but it's just Trump cash versus Kamala crash. Stock markets are crashing. Jobs numbers are terrible. It was one bad, not even bad month of jobs numbers. One not great month of jobs numbers. Have you seen Trump talking about the monthly jobs numbers over the past 6 months or so? You haven't, have you? You wanna guess why? I think you can. So anyway, again, this should be beneath us, okay? To talk about politics in such a ridiculous fact-free way, but this is all he has, mispronouncing her name and lying about causality. That said, let's move to one more bit of Fox News, sort of trying to respond to this new narrative.
I'd love to debate both of you guys on the economy. GDP's higher, jobs is higher, wages is higher. The stock market's up huge under Biden. This idea of what you guys are talking about, there's more 2,000-day losses under President Trump than 500-day losses under Joe Biden. We should get the facts right on where the economy is.
So that is Robert Wolf with some, again, undeniable actual facts, actual numbers. And you were probably focusing on the information he was providing, I understand that. But if you looked at Tomi Lahren, she gives a really big, exaggerated, uncomfortable smile because she knows, oh, this sounds really bad. Okay, I've got no response to this. So she's already preparing to talk about like the genitals of high school athletes or something, whatever it takes to get off of this topic and back to something, some identity politics thing where we think we can win or whatever. Anyway, it's ridiculous. We'll see what happens long term. If the economy does go into a recession, then that could very much affect the election, whether it should or not. But a momentary dip is not necessarily the salvation that they think it is. Okay, with that said, let's move to the Supreme Court. We're gonna jump into talking about one of my favorite people in politics. You thought that you knew everything there was to know about the corruption of Clarence Thomas, didn't you? Well, no, there's always more hiding. You turn over a rock and you'll find more utter corruption. And we have an example of it. Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden revealed just yesterday that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas had failed to disclose even more flights aboard a private jet owned by Republican mega donor Harlan Crow than were previously known. I'm gonna give you the details in just a sec, but I want you to think about that. We have been through now like a year and a half of the reports of this. We've had the Supreme Court create their ethics guidelines that they're gonna volunteer to abide by or whatever. And despite all of this, he decided not to just get out in front of it and say all of them. Why leave more breadcrumbs for HuffPost or ProPublica or Ron Wyden or whatever to track down? Why would you do that? You do that for one of two reasons. Maybe you can think of others, but I have two hypotheses. One is that it's a pragmatic thing. He literally can't even remember all the trips he took with Harlan Crow. He would love maybe to disclose them all so he could get past it, but he's gone on so many private jet flights, so many mega yacht voyages that he doesn't even remember what all of them are. That's one explanation. The other is, and this is gonna be from his point of view, F you, I don't care, I can do whatever I want. You can never get rid of me. I have this position until the end of my life. I've already been paid, I'm gonna continue to be paid, so all of you can go F yourself. That one's a little bit more crass, but I think it's also equally likely to be the actual reason. I think that's what he's thinking. But let's get into the details. So in a letter to an attorney representing Harlan Crow, Ron Wyden demanded travel and financial records related to Crow's super yacht, the Michaela Rose, and the relationship between the justice and his billionaire benefactor. Crow's legal team has repeatedly avoided providing such records, but Wyden said that they could help determine whether the real estate mogul claimed business deductions on personal trips aboard luxury craft, including those with Thomas, to evade taxes. That is a pretty clever way to make it like more salient, I guess. And make it seem more, I don't need that for me personally. I mean, sure, I wanna know if he broke the law or whatever. I think we deserve to know how utterly corrupt a member of the Supreme Court is, and who the hell is this billionaire to be like, no, I'm just not gonna tell you about the millions of dollars I have transferred to this guy in presence and experiences. Apparently, again, he's a billionaire, so he can, under our system of government, do literally anything he wants. And the right, despite claiming to be populist, will do literally nothing about it. But just bear that in mind. We're gonna give you a little more details. Customs and Border Protection records revealed that the justice and his wife, Virginia Thomas, Ginny, who you've heard a little bit about, took a round trip between Hawaii and New Zealand in November 2010 on Mr. Crow's private jet. So just another fun trip, Hawaii and New Zealand. Maybe they did the Lord of the Rings hiking tour or something. It was lots of fun. It probably cost a lot of money, but they didn't have to pay for it, despite making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Totally needless corruption, that's what they're doing there. So Ron Wyden also said, on several occasions, I've asked directly how many times Justice Thomas traveled aboard the Michaela Rose and private jets paid for by Mr. Crow, and whether Mr. Crow deducted the cost of these particular trips on tax filings. These should not be difficult questions to ask. The possibility that Mr. Crow may have lavished secret gifts on a sitting Supreme Court justice and then impermissibly reduced his taxable income by millions of dollars with impunity requires legislative scrutiny. And I really hope that they investigate this. They've opened an inquiry. I hope that they maintain control of the Senate, because if they don't, then this is probably gone, and take control of the House so we can get investigations going on both houses. I would love to see, like AOC filed for Thomas's impeachment. Todd Anderson reminds us, we talked about that at the time. I wanna see AOC involved in the investigation at the House level into Clarence Thomas and other corrupt justices on the Supreme Court. So more reasons to be excited about the election, not just the presidential race, as important as it is, the Senate and the House as well. We need to maintain and get control by the Democrats so they can start investigating some of this. And I will leave you, I just wanna remind you, I said it earlier, but he gets into this. The Michaela Rose is a mega yacht. It's a vehicle the likes of which likely none of you have been on. I've never been on anything like it. And the going story apparently is that Clarence Thomas can't even remember how many expansive world voyages he took on a vehicle that if you or I were to go on it, it would be like a once in a lifetime thing that we would remember for the rest of our life. For him, it's just a weekend, man. I can't be bothered to keep records. Anyway, with that said, we are gonna take our second break. Or you want me to break? You want me to reset? I'm seeing both. Okay, you know what we're gonna do? We are gonna take our second break. When we come back, I think that we will talk very briefly about another legal matter, and then we've got more news, including new polls. Let's jump into this break. Thank you, producer Mike. I appreciate the option. I didn't read it that way, but now it makes perfect sense to me. And going forward, I'll know. So thank you. Okay, with that said, Ingram says, I was hopeful with Harris, but now I'm excited. Me too. I mean, and again, just it's the knowing. And they didn't make a bad choice. They could have. Oh my God, they so could have. They had several good choices, but they didn't make the bad choice. And just, we all know that there's gonna be difficult moments in this campaign, the next 94 days or whatever until election day. And it's gonna happen, but I don't want it to happen yet. I just wanna coast on feeling good for a little bit longer. Let's maintain it, okay? And I do wanna do that reset on the other side, I think. I think that's a good idea. Okay, with that said, let's jump into some more of your comments. Aaron Torres, thank you for being a member. It is much appreciated. Oh, I wanted to read this from Hoosier Daddy 89, who says Steve Martin reenacting his planes, trains, and automobiles rant on Neil Page on SNL to Trump. And by the way, you know, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting to the listener. I love that. That Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is, longtime viewers probably know, literally one of my favorite movies of all time. I watch it at least once a year, and I can't wait for Steve Martin to play Tim Walz if it happens. Okay, let's see. Jedi Dragon, member for 43 months, says, I was so ready to be bitterly disappointed by Kamala's VP pick, but as of today, I think she might just waltz away with this election. Sorry I had to, but did you? No, I liked it, it was good. Okay, oh, by the way, you know what? Who's your daddy? Do you have a Blue Apron gift card? Because you reference Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and I love that. So if you don't already have one, send an email to rewards@tyt.com, give your handle, they'll get you hooked up. Thank you for the comment. Okay, Moondragon, member for 40 months, says, happy Mooniversary. The Veep news made me the happiest guy ever. Thank you for continuing to be our hero. I think that's to Walz. I don't think that's to me, because I'm not the hero in this story, but I do appreciate the support. Yeah. Okay, David Lucero, member for 41 months, says, Nostra Dimbas predicts Tim unleash hell on Earth. That's funny. Covered in Cake says in a super chat, I feel like when Kamala entered the race, America woke up from a coma after a horrible car wreck. Today we started physical therapy. Hopefully in November we get to go home again. I love that comment. That is wonderful. Okay, let's see. Venderalia Warlock says in a super chat, picking Walz is like asking Lady Pool what time it is. Uzi time, baby. Well, he's good on guns, so let's hopefully he won't pull out an Uzi, but I do like, again, the reference, thank you. Moondragon says in super chat, is Walz Harris's cat? I approve. Don't know, do they have cats? I might be missing a reference. Okay, let's see. Miss Blue from Lower Sioux, yay, Walz, he's my governor, but we are willing to share. If lieutenant governor becomes gov, she'll be first indigenous female governor. Yeah, I started to read an article about how that's likely to shake out. I don't know the procedure in the state. That seems like the most likely outcome, but I don't know for sure. So don't take me for that. Moon River says, balls to the waltz, like it. There's so many great t-shirts they can make and that we should probably make. Should we make that? We'll see. Demi says, this is Hub's first presidential election as a citizen. He was talking of sitting it out when it was Biden and now is so excited to vote for Harris Walz and I couldn't be happier or prouder. That is awesome. I'm very excited. And I think there's just a lot of people like that. And by the way, there's a lot of people that were like, okay, I'm gonna vote, but I'm not gonna be super excited. But now they're invested. And then there's another group that were on the other side of the line that were like, it's just not enough. I just don't want to do this. And now I think a lot of people have been brought in and you're seeing that movement in the polls. Okay, Technosita says he's not a Diet Mountain douche like Vance though. Nice. Chris Huggy gifted 5 subs over on Twitch, much appreciated. And we'll be right back. Okay, so much to get to. We're gonna do it fast, okay? Maximum effort, let's do this thing. The Supreme Court has, perhaps surprisingly, put the kibosh on efforts to stall the sentencing of Donald Trump in his hush money case. Now, this isn't the one that you're probably thinking of. This isn't one of the Donald Trump or his legal team efforts to stymie it. This is Missouri that got involved for like kind of a ridiculous reason, which we're gonna talk about. I wanna remind you all that a Manhattan jury did in fact convict Trump on 34 felony charges back in May, and a judge set the sentencing for September 18th of this year. Now, the immunity that our God, Emperor, President Kings now have could potentially still mess with this. But this isn't gonna mess with this. And let's get into what Missouri was going on about. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, a Republican and ally of Trump, totally coincidentally, filed an unusual set of motions at the Supreme Court asking the justices to postpone the sentencing until after the November election and to lift the gag order the judge imposed in this case. So why? Well, Missouri claimed that the hush money prosecution violated the rights of the state's voters by preventing them from fully engaging with and hearing from a major party presidential candidate in the run-up to the November election. New York responded that Missouri's bid consisted of, quote, generalized and speculative grievances and was legally defective. I just want to stop to say, generalized and speculative grievances that are legally defective could literally be Donald Trump's bar trivia team. Like that just describes him to a T, so why shouldn't it describe this? What are you talking about, Missouri? The fact that he could get sentenced means that they don't get, first of all, they still will get to vote for him. And many of them will because they don't care about the fact that he's a felon. That's already well established in Missouri and across America. And the gag order has basically nothing to do with the election. You just can't attack people involved in the trial. And if you're saying that your campaign for the presidency is contingent on being able to attack the family of a judge, that says so much more about you and your failings than it does about the Democrats or about the prosecution in this case. So I'm very glad that they knocked that down. I guess it wasn't guaranteed that it would actually happen. But anyway, they denied the request without explanation. And Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito indicated that they would have allowed Missouri to file a formal complaint with the high court, but would not grant other relief, according to the court. So I don't know how substantive that is, but you have to have an opportunity for Alito and Thomas, the two most purely ideological, activist, conservative judges on the court, to imply that they would have loved to have done something corrupt had they had the opportunity. Anyway, here's a response by Attorney General Andrew Bailey saying, it's disappointing that the Supreme Court refused to exercise its constitutional responsibility to resolve state versus state disputes. I will continue to prosecute a lawsuit against Kamala Harris, Joe Biden's DOJ, for coordinating the illicit prosecutions against President Trump. That last bit is important because it gives you an idea of how he thinks about things. He just believes whatever he sees on True Social. Kamala Harris has nothing to do with this. Joe Biden has nothing to do with this. By the way, you notice her name is first in this. How the hell is she in charge of this all of a sudden? She's not, he's not, it has nothing to do with it. Yeah, continue prosecuting your lawsuit. The Supreme Court already told you to kick rocks. Where exactly are you gonna go after that? The Galactic Court? Also, they refused to exercise their responsibility to resolve state versus state disputes. No, they didn't. They resolved it. Go away now. New York gets to continue with their sentencing. The matter is resolved, at least for now. Okay, with that said, we need to jump into our next topic. Let's cue this up.
Donald Trump, for all the reasons I listed, should be up high single, low double digits. And yet, by his own unforced errors, he's giving this to Kamala Harris.
Well, he's making a lot of errors, no doubt about that. I think at this point in history, Donald Trump, I agree with you, should be up in the polls. The reason he's not is that after he was shot, people had an expectation that he would modify a little bit, and he has not. He picks fights, and the fights don't help him. They don't help the American people.
So that's Bill O'Reilly, and obviously not a big fan of him, although I don't hate the purple tie. It's a little bit weird that both of them decided to go with purple on that particular day. But look, he is right to point out that these are largely unforced errors. Donald Trump was always going to do this in hindsight, I guess. Maybe some of you saw it coming. He can't move past himself. He can't move past his failings. And as we said, it's Kamala Harris. You can think of probably at least 3 reasons that he is going to be triggered every single second from now until election day, just by her, hearing her voice, seeing her face, and it's gonna pull the darkest, deepest demons out of him. And then he's just going to blurt them out on stage with the NABJ or in interviews. He just can't help it. On True Social, he's gonna mispronounce her name and he's gonna call her Kamala multiple times and say that she became a black person and all of the weird stuff that Republicans do eat up. They love it. But rational, sane people that are not already in the Trump camp have no interest in this stuff. And so it is good to see them acknowledging it. You know, Bill O'Reilly can acknowledge that this is all like utterly pointless wastes of time from him. But I will also remind everyone, as he did, there was this special moment that he was given. This truly miraculous thing happened where a conservative Republican tried to assassinate him. and somehow just barely nicked his ear. It is, if they did not script it, it was not planned, don't believe in any conspiracy theories, but if they could have, it could not have gone better for them. And it provided this opportunity. Maybe the only thing that maybe could have gotten him to stop being who he was and be who he needs to be to win the election. And he can't. He wasted it. As always, he's given everything and he wastes it. And now you can see it reflected in the polls. In the Real Clear Politics polling average, Kamala Harris is now taking the lead. She's up by 0.2, which is still very much a close race. Do not get too excited. But this is not individual polls now. This is the aggregate of polls. And it's multiple aggregates that she's moved up on. And you can see sort of the movement over the past couple of weeks in this, going from Trump being generally up to now she's being generally up and by larger numbers. And also, I just want to throw out New York. They'd been talking about that being in play because of Joe Biden. No, she's up by 12, she's up by 14. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about New York, which is certainly good news. And that's, by the way, whether it's a 2-person race, whether it's a 3-person race. So that is good news too. Look, it's still a campaign. Nothing is done until it's done. In the case of Donald Trump, he hasn't even lost once he's lost on election day. You still have to survive the coup. So everybody gird yourself, buckle up. This thing isn't over until inauguration. But the fact that he is so down compared to a few weeks ago, there's a lot of influencing factors, but most of it is his fault. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Okay, with that said, I do want to end though this first hour with a little bit of fun, okay, and on a lighter note. So I was a part of the White Dudes for Harris. There's been a lot of great organizing and fundraising calls. Well, they did a Comics for Harris, which sounds like it should be the best of all of those. So I want to give you a little bit of that, starting with this.
JD Vance looks like a composite of every guy that's called you a bitch on Bumble.
JD Vance looks like you told ChatGPT to draw a guy who says, "M'lady." What are we doing?
I thought it was good. JD Vance is confusing because his rhetoric wants us to panic about immigrants, but his eyeliner wants us to panic at the disco.
Okay, so that obviously is Cecily Strong with Eric Swalwell, the comedy duo that you never expected, but not actually bad. And you expect Cecily Strong to knock it out of the park. She's one of the best all-time members of SNL. Her presence is sorely missed, most of all by me. But I didn't expect Swalwell. That was not a bad line, actually. I kind of like it. The delivery is a little bit rough. He's not a professional comedian. We're not going to be too hard on him, but I like this. Again, they're organizing for Harris. They're raising money for Harris. They're trying to keep the vibes light and happy. And to that end, let's get into a little bit more of what happened.
JD Vance has been such a mistake. Trump keeps calling him Eric.
I'm not surprised JD Vance is so anti-choice, since having no other option is the only reason he's Trump's running mate.
Trump wearing a maxi pad on his ear is the most support he has ever shown for women's reproductive health. There's speculation that Trump is unhappy with Vance and is thinking about getting rid of him, but he better hurry because it's been 6 weeks.
JD Vance has some very strange and upsetting positions, honestly. Just ask his couch.
JD claims to be the voice of the Rust Belt, which is only true if we are talking about his belt after he f***s an orange couch.
Okay, so there's a couple good lines there, and even Swalwell had one good one. By the way, I love that the couch stuff is sticking around, and like any conservatives in the audience or whatever, don't be like, yeah, it's not true. No, everybody knows it's not true. The issue for you is that it's hilarious. Nobody thinks it's true. Nobody's choosing to support them or not based on the couch thing. It's just funny. I'm sorry, it is. I love Cecily Strong. All I've wanted over the past couple of years is have a reason, an excuse to talk about Cecily Strong on this show, and she's now provided it. And I love her lines. I wanted to do a stand-up set, literally that set, just put it together, practice it or whatever. But in particular, I like that last joke, she sort of hesitated on it. She does a lot of like raunchy stuff or whatever, but even for her, I think it started to get her, and I love it. I love that she's having fun with it. I love everybody having fun in these dark times. But I want to mix it up. It wasn't just stand up on the Comics for Harris. You also had some musical acts. So we're going to end with Nick Offerman.
When he mocked the disabled and war heroes, I looked the other way. He said to march on the Capitol. Well, if the president says it's okay. And I don't mind sex with porn stars. I'd do it too if I had the guts. But when it comes to the furniture, well, that's just nuts. So I'm proud to be a Kamala man who has quit the GOP. 'Cause I just can't abide a man who's tried for 34 felonies. And it's time to stand up and face the fact that the men that I once cheered are a bunch of wingnut white nationalists. Well, those guys are weird.
That's really funny. I didn't know he apparently used to be conservative, I guess. I didn't know that. I know that he had the character or whatever, but a great song, very funny. It feels like he was kind of riffing, and I love it. Again, like, this has always been the case, but I feel like ever since Joe Biden dropped out, it's become more true than ever. Like, we have a lot of burdens on our side of the aisle of seeing actual problems, caring about the people that are affected by it, and striving to change it. It is much more difficult to be on our side than on their side, where all you do is just you spin the wheel of cruelty, choose a group, and then attack them, okay? It's harder to be on our side, but also we have more fun, we have more joy, we're capable of it. We're capable of our own joy, we're capable of appreciating the joy of others. And that is even more obvious now. Everybody on our side is having fun, okay? They're attacking and they're hating, they're lying about Algerian boxers and stuff like that. They're just weird. Again, they throw around the term woke scolds or whatever. They're the scolds. We're actually enjoying life, we're enjoying art, and you can see it on demonstration right there. And by the way, that was my excuse to have Cecily Strong, my favorite SNL person of all time, on the show briefly. But you know what would be even better? Having Cecily Strong on the show to talk about politics, talk about the election. And I don't know if I can make that happen, but if you guys send messages, maybe it happens. I think she's awesome. Would love to have her on. Nick Offerman as well. It'd be totally cool. But mostly Cecily Strong. Anyway, let's see if we can make that happen. Okay, that's all the time we have in the first hour of the show. Thank you everyone who's been watching. There is certainly more to come in the aftermath. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Aftermath, one and all. John Iadarola here, and that's it, but that's gonna have to be enough. I wanna read some of your comments before we jump back into the stories, of which we have 3 that are awesome. Moon Rivers says in a super chat, yes, make that shirt, who's with me? I think that's a reference to the balls to the walls shirt. I have proposed it. I don't think it's gonna be made, but you know what? Maybe if TYT doesn't make it, maybe we have to make it. And it probably already exists anyway. Anyway, okay, let's see. Alexander Pontier says in super chat, Trump attack on Walz. Waltz. He once rooted for the Packers. Minnesotans can't trust him. You shouldn't either. Such a great pick. Can't wait to vote him. Well, I think that was you at the end, I think. But anyway, I'm confused. But yes, the attacks are gonna be ridiculous. They're gonna try to talk about the DUI, and they're gonna spread, like they're gonna try to pitch him as a criminal and open themselves up to so many attacks for Donald Trump, which I love. Scott Cameron Pedigo says in a super chat, Steve Martin would be good playing Tim Walz on SNL, but I think Christoph Waltz would be an even better choice. I don't think so, but you never know. Level 18 white girl says, wait, isn't she the comic that gave John the nickname DJ Lunchbox? No, that was Leslie Jones. I wish that was Leslie Jones. That was Leslie Jones, who roasted me on Twitter better than I've ever been roasted before, and it was awesome. Demi Dragon says, do you think with the Waltz pick that the timeline might be correcting itself? We're exiting the upside down? I literally messaged Jordan Ewell earlier today and said that when the assassin tried to take out Trump and fired the bullet that miraculously barely touched him, that was such an unlikely event that it shattered our timeline, and we went off on a splinter timeline that was no longer weighted down, encumbered by what was, and now good things could happen once again, and that's why so much good news keeps happening. I don't actually think that's what happened, but that could be. It's a multiverse thing, look it up. Pilly Lamb, a member for 23 months, says there's such a different vibe between the 2 campaigns. You have your nostalgic fear and hatred and your mirth and joy and lightness on the other. Now they do have some mirth and lightness on their side. They fake dance in front of a cyber truck with a chair sniffer, which is fun. But other than that, no joy. Again, Donald Trump still, as far as I know, has never laughed in person, never laughed on video. If you can find a video of Donald Trump honestly laughing, I would love to see it. Okay, with that said, let's move into our first story. Basically, the guy behind Project 2025, which you are supposed to believe is dead now and not an important thing to talk about, has a book coming out, and it reveals a whole lot about him and about Project 2025 and about the Trump agenda, and we need to talk about it. This is Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, considered the architect of Project 2025. So Media Matters got an early copy of the book. It's Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America, which is, again, it's like ask ChatGPT, hey, I'm a conservative writing a politics book, what should I call it? And they'll literally give you that title. So this is the book we talked about a week or two ago with JD Vance writing the foreword and poking another hole in the idea that Project 2025 is in any way separate from the Trump agenda. So we're done with that narrative now, and we all know that they worked together on this. So let's talk about some of the stuff that Roberts focuses on in a book length sort of expounding on these ideas. So he says that having children should not be considered an optional individual choice, but quote, a social expectation or a transcendent gift. Now look, he's obviously super religious or whatever, as so many of them are. And so we're not supposed to criticize that sort of language, but I'm going to, because screw that. That is so effing weird, you creepy judgmental weirdo. Who the F do you think you are? And I really wish that I could openly swear right now. What the F are you talking about? It shouldn't be an individual choice. We shouldn't choose if we have and raise children, bring this into the world, change our life for the rest of our life, change the lives of all the people around. That shouldn't be up to us. Small government people, that's who these are. They're small government, except that they think you shouldn't get to determine what your life is. Not even just control of your own body, but control over what your life will be. It's a social expectation. Okay, so just whatever the people around you want you to do, you have to do. Or it could be a transcendent gift, which is such a sick reversal of reality to claim that that's what it is. A transcendent gift to force a person who doesn't want to have a kid to have a kid. That's not a gift, that's making them have something. You're not giving them anything. You're not offering funding or anything. You're forcing them to have and raise a kid. What the hell are you talking about? Okay, so he describes, again, such old school, bizarre ways of looking at the world. He describes contraceptive technologies. You can call them condoms and birth control, you creepy religious weirdo, as quote, revolutionary inventions that shape American culture away from abundance, marriage, and family. He labeled reproductive choice methods as a quote, snake strangling the American family. So again, all the religious imagery or whatever, the metaphors and all that. You may be a Christian, you may be an atheist, you may follow some other religion, and that may inform your values. Not anymore. Because he has a religion and it's better than yours and it gets to be in control. That's the way he thinks about things. And you using condoms or birth control is killing the family. Again, you don't get to choose what happens to you. A creepy old religious guy with a misconception of what the Bible says about abortion gets to decide. We're learning a lot today. Okay, this is Project 2025. Okay, so he also blamed contraception for a rise in abortion rates, which is truly insane. He says as other kinds of contraceptive technologies spread, abortion rates went up, not down. And as we all know, if two things happen near the same time, they obviously caused each other. The hell are you talking about? You're talking about a period of like 50 years. You can't conceive of other potential explanations for why two numbers go up? Anyway, he says it makes it seem like having a child isn't optional. Again, it is optional, it will be optional because they will not win on this issue, but he doesn't want it to be optional. And he goes on to say, once you understand this pattern, individual choice masking cultural upheaval, you will see it everywhere. In vitro fertilization seems to assist fertility, but has the added effect of incentivizing women to delay trying to start a family, often leading to added problems when the time comes. So again, it is not enough that they have killed Roe v. Wade. They are definitely coming for IVF. That is the Project 2025 architect saying it's a sick thing that ruins families. He also, by the way, doesn't appear to understand or care to understand anything about the struggles of people who have used IVF, who have children from IVF, or have tried and failed with IVF or other technologies. He doesn't care. He's got a snake metaphor that he finds more persuasive. And he goes on to say, this is sort of taking the contraception stuff and the kid stuff and broadening it. That's a problem because a childless society becomes decadent and nostalgic. I just want to remind everyone that he is worshiping in the altar of a guy who craps on a golden toilet, but you're decadent because you can't afford to have kids, just to be clear. Aging, barren societies literally become consumptive, taking on higher levels of debt and depleting savings as they pay foreign workers to keep things going. They become less and less capable of innovation, a young person's game, and more stuck and decrepit every year. Their traditions, culture, and way of life die out with nothing to hand on and no one to hand it on. A culture of childlessness is, in the final analysis, a culture of despair. I think a lot of people do feel despair. But the solution to their despair is not to tell them that they are required by the power of the government to have kids, but to make it like financially possible or preferable to have kids. The government could actually do something other than just literally requiring that they procreate. That would be nice. Also, by the way, he's talking about how we need innovation. We need to keep up with things. And he is advancing an ideology that didn't even really exist even in the 1950s, but he wants you to believe that it does. No innovation. We're gonna go back to the time before Roe v. Wade, before you were constitutionally allowed to use contraception. It's such an amazing bait and switch. You're not supposed to evolve on anything. You're not supposed to develop or improve. Nothing is supposed to change. We're supposed to be the same as we always were, but that sounds bad. So let's pretend that we care about the kids or something. And so look, there's a whole book here. We could go more in depth into it. This is who Kevin Roberts is. This is what the Heritage Foundation is, by the way. And just briefly, they want you to believe that that's like a think tank. That's like a serious place where they have scholars and philosophers and they do studies and then they come up with proposals for policies. This sounds like any freakish online pastor telling you that your vagina's up to him to control and he gets to choose when you get knocked up. But again, super reputable because it's been around for a while and they have a lot of money. But he's got a snake metaphor for you that he finds very compelling. Anyway, don't let them try to move on from the Project 2025 stuff. They are trying to take the focus off of it, which they were too stupid to do from the very beginning. but it is still very much the roadmap for what a second Trump term would be like. Okay, we're gonna move on to another topic in just a sec. First though, I wanna thank Ghost Dog TV for 41 months with us on Twitch. Thank you. B. Finesi for 47 months, just on the cusp of 4 years. We do appreciate that. Kelt 1967 has been here for 27 months. Thank you to all of you and everyone else for your support and allowing us to do this. And with that, let's jump into our next topic. Elon Musk's estranged daughter Vivian says that the business tycoon and purported genius is, quote, a serial adulterer trying to rebuild his brand image. And it gets even more devastating from there. And I love it because while I've been trying to break through the cult of Musk for years now, I don't know the guy. I've never hung out with the guy. But his daughter does know him and knows all of his faults and his flaws and his failings, and she is now describing it in awesome detail on social media on a daily basis. So the way that this began is an account called SMX. I don't know much about the account SMX except that they pay the richest man in the world to be on Twitter. So that says something about them. But anyway, says even though Elon Musk was super busy, he still made time for his family. Nothing is more important than family because he has some of his kids there and he's so busy, you know, buying up businesses where other people have invented things and then he ruins them. He's a very busy man. He's the CEO of 8 companies. Did you know that? And he totally thinks about those companies on a weekly basis. Anyway, he responded to that saying all 5 boys super happy, implying that he's all about family. So I don't know what his family life is really like. I can't necessarily judge that, but his daughter knows. And so she responded to that saying, look, I don't know if you genuinely believe this or if you live in your own delusional fantasy land. And frankly, I don't care. It seems to me like you're trying to rebuild your brand image as the, quote, caring paternal father, which I will not let go unchallenged. If I'm gonna be honest, this is absolutely pathetic. You just won't stop lying about me in interviews, books, social media, etc. Thank God you're absolutely terrible at it, because otherwise this would be significantly more difficult. That lying is a reference to many interviews, but perhaps most notably where he said that his daughter was dead to him as he continually misgendered her and dead named her, and then said that she was killed by the woke mind virus because she is affected by the woke mind virus, not him, a guy who used to be on top of the world and now dances every day for right-wing applause. But anyway, she goes on to say, like, quote, neo-Marxist / communist who was brainwashed at high school to be trans and, quote, think being rich is evil, references to things he said about her in the past, is the best you could go with? Really? Like, really? If you're gonna lie about me, why would you choose a method so obnoxious in its stupidity? It's beyond stupid, it's desperate. The fact anyone believed this for even 5 seconds is beyond me. Not to mention going out of your way to misgender me, which is both completely transparent and honestly just sad. But then to the thesis. I understand your new angle is this, quote, Western values / Christian family man thing, but it's such a weird choice. You're not a family man, you're a serial adulterer who won't stop effing lying about your own children. You're not a Christian. As far as I'm aware, you've never stepped foot in a church. You're not some, quote, bastion for equality and progress. You called Arabic the language of the enemy when I was 6, have been sued for discrimination multiple times, and are from apartheid South Africa. You're not saving the planet. You do not give an F about climate change, and you're lying about multi-planetary civilization as both an excuse and because you want to seem like the CEO from Ready Player One. I would mention the birth rate stuff, but I'm not touching that weird 14 words breeder-s with a 10-foot pole. You single-handedly disillusioned me with how gullible we are as a species, because somehow people keep believing you for reasons that continue to evade me. And never have I ever more wanted to scream into the cosmos, same. I mean, obviously I didn't have to go through the personal stuff, but I also am completely confused about why his cult is so durable when he provides dozens of pieces of evidence on a daily basis that he is nothing that he wants you to believe that he is. And I love that she breaks down all the different elements of the mythology of Elon Musk, that he cares about the planet, that he cares about going to other planets or whatever, bastion for equality and progress. Look up all the information about the cultures that he has created at SpaceX, Tesla, and all of that, what he's doing to Twitter, obviously. And he's one of many Republicans. They like the idea, the brand of Christianity, because they think it makes them win arguments automatically. I'm the Christian one, I'm the religious one, I just win. They don't go to church, they don't believe it. Trump does the exact same thing. They're atheists, that's what they are. They worship themselves and their own purported genius. There's no room anymore in their own personal church for a God, they have themselves. So anyway, I love to see it. I'm gonna continue to follow the social media activity of Vivian because it gives us an an inside look into who this person was and what his history was. I would love to have Vivian on the show, by the way. If any of you have a contact, that would be great. But it's just, we gotta break through in the same way that we gotta break through the cult of Trump. We have to break through this cult too, because this one's big and it's damaging. It's ruining a lot of people's lives. Okay, with that said, we're gonna move on to one more story in just a couple of minutes. We actually are kind of like a little bit ahead of time, I think. We're doing pretty well on time management today. And by we, I mean me. But anyway, see, I can worship at my own altar as well. Okay, Fascist Killid said, to me, Cecily Strong kind of reminds me of Francesca a little bit. Well, they are both incredibly accomplished comedians. Demi is a member, Tiffany became a member, and 57 Boomer is a member as well. Thank you to all of you. Preston Park says, it's hard to take Walz will, quote, open hell on earth seriously next to a picture of him holding a piglet. Yeah, maybe if he was holding like a goat, then there would be like satanic imagery or something, but it's a pig. Pigs are delightful. He is delightful and pigs are delightful. You look bad in attacking those things. Anyway, Guy North says, John, you really speak well. I love when you and Brett get together. Well, actually, speak of the devil, Brett is in the building. He's almost never here, but he's here. I'm gonna hopefully talk to him a little bit after the show. Okay, with that said, we're gonna move into our final story. Look, there's a case to be made that I should not be lowering myself to discussing this nobody, but I hated the things he said, so I'm going to anyway. Let's start with this.
Kamala has the womanish traits of being a cackling, irrational, and venomous serpent without the womanly traits of grace, generosity, and tenderness. We miss those in her. But those womanish traits are now in control of our politics.
Okay, so that's some guy on the Daily Wire. It doesn't really matter, but you can tell that he fits very well into that media infrastructure in that he deeply hates and distrusts women and is just desperate for any opportunity to attack them. And so isn't it a coincidence that we have another woman who's running for president? Oh, she's a devilish serpent and she's cackling and she's hysterical. It's so weird. It just always works out that way for the right. They like attacking women as hysterical cackling witches, and they just all happen to be that way. That's about the women. It's not that they just see every woman that way. So anyway, he's got a lot of issues clearly that he is not working through when it comes to women. But the way that he attacks Harris is truly deranged. I'm gonna return to his core thing there, but I'm gonna give you a little bit more of the video first.
I was talking last week about City Journal's Faye Heimowitz, who's a really good observer of sexual politics. And she was talking about the women who love Hamas, but also talking about the rise of women in politics in general and how it has feminized the way we do our politics. And let me just read a little bit of this. Women's strategies. She's talking about the fact that it's not that women are not competitive and aggressive. It's that because they are smaller and weaker and because their goals are different and their values are different, they have to use different methods than men use, which is usually, I grew up with three brothers. We did nothing but punch each other. My entire childhood was just people flying out through rooms and slugging people. It was like the last reel of a John Wayne movie. Women don't behave that way.
Okay, so I do buy the fact that he was apparently punched a lot growing up. I think a lot of them were to the head, and I don't think he ever recovered. First of all, yes, they're smaller and they're weaker. By the way, Simone Biles could kick his crotch through the top of his skull if she wanted to. So again, it's not that they're describing what they think women are. It's what they want women to only be, and they want the power of culture and government to make it so that they can never be anything else. But I want to return to the bigger issue. So it's not just that he refers to Trump as a quote studly guy. Because there's this weird thing on the right where you're supposed to like imply that you're like attracted to him or turned on by him. I'm not saying that they are. I'm not doing that thing that some people do. I'm just saying like there's this weird thing where you have to kind of imply that you want to cuck yourself to Donald Trump. And we see it over and over. It is super strange. I don't know why they do it. Clearly they're well paid for it, but it's super weird. Studly guy. Like, yeah, he cheats on his wives occasionally. I guess that's true. Is that a good thing, family man? But the biggest point that I want to get to is when he says she has the womanish traits, that's how you talk about women, of being a cackling, irrational, and venomous serpent. Look, Harris has not always been my candidate. I wanted Bernie in 2020 or whatever. I can criticize Harris. She's a venomous serpent. Again, when these guys talk about someone like Kamala Harris, Kamala, by the way, he likes to talk about like men and strength and all that. He's intentionally mispronouncing her name, which is just such a self-own, such a sign of weakness. I just have to do this petty little spiteful thing to show that I don't respect her. It's so utterly pathetic, and it should be beneath any man. It is beneath any real man, but he persists. So anyway, cackling, irrational, venomous serpent. What about her is venomous? Is she mean? You know who he's describing there? Of a rational, venomous serpent? That's Donald Trump. He's irrational, fundamentally. It's the reason that he's trailing in this race. It's the reason that he's ended up in so much legal trouble is because he can't think. He has a broken brain. And venomous serpent, Kamala Harris could spend the rest of her life dishing out insults and she would never catch up to Donald Trump. Again, it's all projection. They desperately want her to be this thing. And so they describe what they are stuck with. The pathetic, failed man that is Donald Trump, that they have to pretend is some bastion of masculinity. Anyway, I wanted to end that just a little bit early so I can have 30 seconds. I want to be very clear. People are posting in the comments. Careful with that characterization of atheists. Worshipping the altar of themselves compares atheist progressives to Trump, which makes zero sense. You'll get clips saying stuff like this. I'm an atheist. I was not saying that they do this because they're atheists. There are two things can be true at the same time. They're pretending to be Christians and they're not. And they worship themselves. That doesn't mean that all atheists worship themselves. I'm an atheist and have been for literally decades, and I stick up for atheists constantly. But atheists by themselves are not, like that doesn't automatically mean that you're awesome. They can be atheists and they can be bad, but they're not bad because they're atheists. Can I just be very, very clear about that? Are we clear? I am not insulting the thing that I am, to be clear. Anyway. With that said, thank you everyone for joining us. We do have a big show coming up tomorrow. It is going to be Big News Wednesday. Sharon Reed is going to be here. We've got some awesome stories already chosen to talk about that I can't wait to discuss with Sharon. And I hope that you're all excited for it. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. We'll see you soon.